Hi everybody, it's Deborah from Embody Nature and I am a trauma and emotional regulation coach. So I help people to work on the patterns that run their system, things that they've collected from childhood that are now showing up in relationships and making relationships really challenging for them, and maybe parenting or just people not being able to achieve the things that they're wanting to in life because they're sabotaging themselves quietly underneath the surface. So thank you for joining me today. I guess I was inspired by Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal and talking around, and one of the things I've heard him say is the real abuse wasn't just what happened to you, it was being left alone in it. And it really hit me and made me realize that sometimes it's not just what we experience, but it's how we experience it that can actually really impact how you process that and how you sit with that in your adult life. So I guess I want to say up front, if this topic feels really close to home, please be gentle with yourself and listen, and take care if you need to step out of this. I'm posting it in my post that I sent earlier, so you can just have a look at this down the track and later if you want. So do what you need to do to support yourself. But I guess it's been something that's been, I've been reflecting on lately. So yeah, because sometimes the deepest wound wasn't only what happened to us, it was being left alone in it. So many people who've experienced childhood trauma, and more we understand the impact of that. There, often it's 1 in 4. Statistics are quite horrifying how many people have experienced some kind of adverse childhood experience. At least 50% of us have had one. And this is whether this is some kind of abuse, whether that's neglect, whether that's family dysfunction or unsafe environments. The injury just wasn't the event itself, it was the absence of safe adults. It wasn't not being protected, not being believed, or not having anyone notice that we were struggling, and not having that someone beside us saying, I see what's happening, I'm here, you don't have to carry this alone. And I think that matters because so many adults are walking around carrying shame about the way that they cope, how they react, how they shut down, how they maybe overgive or people please or struggle in relationships without actually understanding where this came from. So I guess you might resonate with this. Maybe the hardest part wasn't only the pain, maybe it was feeling completely alone inside. And for me, it went as far as feeling like I was completely abandoned. And in my mind, my parents weren't there to protect me. And in fact, they'd put me in the way of a harmful human over and over and over again. So their choices and their lack of protection for me meant that I was in this situation, over years and years. And so I felt very alone. And I'm sure some of you might resonate with that feeling of just thinking, where are these adults showing up for me? There's nobody to go to. You've been emotionally manipulated not to share what was happening, and you feel like it's all on you and feeling very alone and isolated in the world. And that feeling like nobody's safe, nobody's available enough to hold what you're going through. And I guess this can come into our adult relationships. And when we're children, we're not designed to grow up on our own and to feel this sense of I'm alone in the world. We are designed and we are hardwired for attachment. We're hardwired to connect to those people in our world that are going to be there for us and help us grow. So we are wired to turn towards safe adults for that co-regulation, for that comfort, for that meaning making and that protection. So when that doesn't happen, children adapt. Like, we are clever little things. And this is the part I really want you to hear. Children don't adapt because something is wrong with them. They adapt because they're trying to survive. So what happens here? Sometimes children disconnect from themselves. They stop trusting their own feelings. They learn, don't speak, don't need too much, don't upset people. There's this sense of hypervigilance around, just not upsetting people, or if people are upset, we people please to make the environment safe again. We keep the peace in that sense, and we try to handle things ourselves. We don't need anybody. sometimes we might become hyper independent, and this carries through to adulthood. I see plenty of people my age who've just become hyper independent. I don't need anyone. In fact, I don't need a relationship because I'm fine all on my own. Sometimes we become perfectionists, where everything has to be just so, and that's our own coping capacity. Maybe we become the helper. I know I'm very, much in that camp. I've spent my whole life helping those that are most vulnerable, our children, and particularly our children in child protection. We're the ones that are always checking on everybody else, maybe even at the cost of our own self. We should have other people checking in on us. We kind of take that charge, we take that power. We become the people pleaser, the one terrified of abandonment, the one who struggles to trust, and the one who keeps choosing emotionally unavailable people because it just feels like what we're familiar with. And I really want to say this gently, that these patterns often make sense to us. And we have them running so deep in our system, we actually don't even know them. I'm only identifying these patterns in this age and stage of my life. I never realized they were there. I noticed that I'd get angry at things and I'd get dysregulated, but I didn't know why. So I guess they're not kind of personality flaws. These are survival strategies. And when we can see them for what they are, we can then say thank you and just say, look, I don't need you today. Thank you. You've kept me safe up until now. I can actually step back from, that core fear I have with my abandonment wound, and I can choose to connect to people now. So we can make decisions to turn up differently in our relationships. But as a child would rather feel connected to unsafe people than completely abandoned, because for a child, disconnection can feel very terrifying. I'm curious, does this relate to any of you? If it resonates, feel free to, wave, thumbs up, say hi, send some love if you're here and this is just sitting somewhere with you, or, send me a message and we can chat later. So I guess if it resonates with you and your heart, or maybe tell me, what coping strategies do you think you've developed? Are you the people pleaser, someone who's hyper independent, overthinking, shutting down, or trying to be perfect? Or are you the one that's avoiding conflict at all costs? And here's something I think is really important. Healing's not about the grieving, about grieving what happened. Sometimes healing is grieving what should have happened. The adult who should have protected you, the parent who should have noticed, the person who should have believed you, and the safety that you should have had, the comfort that you deserve. So we can grieve all these things. It's just such a loss not to have these things. Maybe we grieve that, that we should have had more reassurance, because I guess many people think is, why am I still affected by this? But if nobody helped you process those overwhelming experiences and almost those intolerable feelings, we can't move forward in that. Nobody showed us how to sit with this, how to move it forward, and how to help our system feel safe. So, of course, there is part of us that's still carrying these patterns, and it really does make sense until we actually unpack it and go deeper and work out what's actually happening under the surface there. And the first thing is identifying what that is. So sometimes what people call being too emotional is actually grief. How many of you sit in this space where you felt like, I show up and I can be over emotional in situations, and or somebody in your life who reacts way out of what you feel might be proportion for what's happening, or we feel like we're too much, but this is actually grief. And sometimes we might have anxiety, and what it's really showing us is an exhausted nervous system that is desperately scurrying to try to stay safe. Sometimes anger is that protection that we never had permission to exist. So we weren't allowed to be angry when we were younger, but now we can. So that anger is protecting us, not just from those feelings, but I guess from those feelings of sadness and hurt and guilt and loss that we have experienced. And sometimes that can show as anger, because anger is sort of a slightly more tolerable emotion than a lot of the other things like fear and guilt and shame. And sometimes people pleasing is a child saying, please don't leave me. And we do this in our relationships. We're desperate for this person not to leave us, and sometimes not to see us. We don't want, through our shame, to be seen as who we are deep down. We're worried if someone sees the person we really are deep down, will they still love us? And that can be really hard to sit in, that fear, that vulnerability. So what does healing actually look like? And I guess healing can look like learning to become that safe adult that we always needed. We can become that safe adult ourselves. We can align ourselves with people who are safe adults and have them around us too. But part of what we can do is take that responsibility ourselves and learn to notice our feelings instead of abandoning them. So when we're feeling these big feelings, it's actually learning to sit in them, to be with them, maybe to breathe through them and go, right now, I feel I'm scared of being abandoned right now because something's happened and I can feel this is being activated in me. And sometimes just saying that in your own head can make a big difference to what you do next. So as this beautiful adult that we can offer ourselves, we can learn to say to ourselves, I matter too. My needs matter. It's really important that I meet my own needs. My boundaries matter. So it's important that I keep those, set those and keep those. I deserve support. And it kind of can also look like learning to regulate. That's a massive skill we can learn in this space, learning how to manage those big emotions when they arise and let them come through us and pass, and maybe learn to breathe or grab a drink or take a moment to just pause before we react. Some of it can also look like learning that self-compassion, like when we're feeling those biggest of feelings, particularly when shame arises, being able to put your hand on your heart and going, it's okay. You know, it's okay to feel these big feelings without it needing to be shameful. We can give ourselves a little bit of compassion to go, I tried my best for what I knew, and maybe I didn't show up like I want to, but, you know, I'm here now and I can show up in the way that I choose now. And I guess the one that I'm learning is connection doesn't have to cost you yourself. So learning that while connection is important, for me, I've learned that connection to a higher source, a connection to my purpose, a connection to myself. And I do that through meditating, through walking in nature, to just even being outside looking at the tree or the sky. So learning to connect with myself is so important, and my higher being. And when I can learn to do that, then I realize that if I disconnect from another human, it's not the end of the world. I can actually sit with that. But equally, the irony of that is when I connect better with myself and with my environment and with my higher self, I find the connection with others just seems to happen. I'm not manifesting the disconnection. I'm not sitting in that fear of abandonment. I'm actually able to sit with that and be safe in that. And then what that actually leads to, the irony, is we lead back into connection. So, you know, the more work we can do in that space. And I guess knowing that my needs are not too much. I actually am entitled to have needs, and I'm entitled to share what they are with others, and they can choose whether they want to turn up and support those needs or not. And that's okay. It's kind of that, you know, Mel Robbins, let them. If they want to be the ones that show up for you, let them. And if they don't, we can let them also. But we can give people the opportunity to show up for us. And I think that's probably the thing in the past. I wasn't letting people have the chance to show up for me and to help me because of that hyper independence, you know, bouncing off of that fear of abandonment. It's kind of that circle and cycle that, oh, look, I just see every time in this. So you were never too needy, too sensitive, too emotional. You were just carrying too much for you to support all on your own, and especially as a child. And so we've grown into these adults who, until we can work through that and give ourselves that inner kind of parenting, and get the support we need, get the therapy. And I guess this leads into the next part. And this is where I think healing gets really important. We can heal those deeper unconscious patterns through the work that I do and subconscious work. So hi, I can see Scott and Toby, Brody, Joanna. It's so nice to see you guys. Welcome. If anyone else is here, drop some love, send me some hearts, some thumbs up. I'm really grateful to have you here and to be able to share this with you. So yeah, we're looking at healing those deeper unconscious patterns through some of that subconscious therapies, because insight alone doesn't always change those patterns. It's good to be aware, but that is literally the first step. Many people understand why they people please or shut down or overreact. They feel anxious, they fear abandonment, or keep ending up in painful relationship dynamics. A lot of us are only just understanding that, but some of us know, yet we're still not able to kind of get to where we want to in this. But beyond knowing, it's actually working on that unconscious. We really need to, a lot of this sits in that sort of subconscious part of ourselves, in the unconscious, and which is in the body, in those protective patterns your nervous system built to survive. And this is the big part that I work on with my NTT therapy. What I love about this work is that we're not just talking about the stories. We're not endlessly analysing what's happened. Often we sit in something, and you know, we do sit in some stories, but we sit in it just to get us into that place of understanding, and then we get ourselves in a safe space and learn how to work through it. So we're gently working with those deeper unconscious patterns, those beliefs and those emotional imprints and nervous system responses that were created during these experiences where safety, protection and connection were missing. Because if a child unconsciously learnt, I'm on my own, I'm not safe, and I have to please people to stay connected, my needs don't matter and love disappears, those beliefs can quietly shape adulthood even without us realizing it. And it can impact on how we parent, how we love and show up in relationships, how we respond to conflict, whether we hide from it, whether we overreact in it, whether we can sit and look at the other person's perspective, how safe we feel in ourselves and in our own body. And healing becomes about more than just coping. It becomes about gently rewiring what the body and the unconscious learnt long ago. So it's not forcing, it's not fixing, and it's not blaming, but it's helping us and your system finally experience safety, self-trust, and connection in a deeper way than you probably ever thought was possible. Because sometimes that adult part of us knows we are safe, but the younger parts of us are still waiting for someone to say, you don't have to carry this all alone. And that is the work that I can do. I can help you carry this. I can help you work through this and sit with this. So if this conversation resonated today, I really want you to hear this. I want this to make sense. So you make sense, your reactions make sense, and your coping patterns make sense. And the fact that you survived in the ways that you did says something incredibly powerful about you and who you are. But survival doesn't have to be where the story ends. Healing is possible. And I know from my own story, I have gone from a place where I wasn't aware of how this was all impacting on me. And I just found it would mean that I would get overwhelmed, and this overwhelm would turn into this sense of anger and this rage that would build inside of me. And this is only like 5 years ago, probably worse, 10, 15 years ago. But, I've actually managed to change that now so that when I get overwhelmed, my process is completely different now. And it feels so liberating to know that I'm not held by the shackles of my past, and I don't have to show up like the person I used to be. That the proudest thing in my life is that I've moved forward through this, and I am now that person that I always wanted to be on the inside, that person who I saw myself as being. That's how I present to the world, and that's how I stand in relationships. That's how I parent. That's how I show up in conflict. That's how I set boundaries, and that's how I stand safe in my own power and in myself. So I want you to know that this is all here for you. You can learn to stop abandoning yourself, find that safety, that connection, and that regulation in new ways. And if this feels like your story, if you are exhausted from repeating the same patterns, feeling overwhelmed, that massive sense of anxiety, shame, stuck, you're reactive, disconnected, people pleasing, or hyper independent, or this is the work that I can help you with through the nervous system healing, emotional regulation, nature connection, and through NTT. So I can support you in all those areas. So if this resonates with you, flick me a message, connect, send your love here. You can say you're ready, write comment below if you like. But I'd love to have a conversation and just see if there's a way that we can help you get, from where you're feeling now to where you want to be. Because I know for me, I have moved such a big distance towards where I want to be. And it's just, I can't even describe how that shows up in my life. So thank you for turning up today. Thank you for being interested in yourself and knowing that there's more to life and that healing is truly possible. So enjoy your Saturday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.